What is the most controversial thing that you deal with in Assyriology?
I mean, besides the ancient alien stuff, because it's certainly controversial to a large group of people, but it's not controversial like in the field itself. So there are obviously certain topics that are very controversial. I would say there's in my sphere, there's a lot of debate about how much intertextuality, how much interaction, borrowing, those sorts of things took place between Akkadian and Sumerian literature and mythology and what we see in the Hebrew Bible. So there are some people that would say there's, maximal levels of it. And so somebody like Wright would say, for example, that the Code of Hammurabi is essentially being copied out. I mean, not quite that extreme, but is directly being reworked in Exodus 21 in the Covenant Code. Whereas other people would say, there are allusions to it. There's sort of a general tradition that stands behind some of these legal aspects, but how much, can we picture the scribe of the Hebrew Bible or of Exodus like sitting there and thinking about the Code of Hammurabi or looking at a copy of the Code of Hammurabi?
He's something? Like, how can I reword this to pass the Turnitin test?
Right, and these are like, there's a spectrum, right? So, and there are absolutely some, and I'm not saying that Wright is wrong. That sounded weird. I'm not saying that the scholar Wright is wrong about his what he's concluded, because there are good scholars on that side. I probably wouldn't go quite as extreme, but it doesn't matter for this discussion. But how much of a dependence is there, for example, in Genesis 1 and 2, or even 3 and 4, on ancient Near Eastern texts, and which ancient Near Eastern texts? So I see a lot of that. And sort of the arguments for more maximalist or more minimalist views of those sorts of things. But that's a pretty popular one that I see, like in my particular sphere.
So just how much are these people influencing each other is somewhat of a controversial topic in the field. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thanks for that. What is the most controversial position that you hold in your field, if you can think of any?
I guess I'm kind of known for not holding controversial positions, primarily because of what I think my job is here online. And I feel like my role is to present consensus scholarship, because I think that's what good scholarship is. Right? People shouldn't be starting, if you're a non-specialist or if you're coming into a particular field, you don't want to latch onto the controversial things first, because all you're going to be doing at that point is, without having a sufficient background to make an educated decision on which controversial, way you want to go, you're just going to end up picking one, right? Without knowing all the background to each of the positions. So I think that the place everybody should be starting is, what is it that everybody agrees on? Let's start there. What's everybody agree on? Now, with that being said, the one thing that, I talked about in my own dissertation was that there are my dissertation deals a lot with these Sumerian texts that were written not as they were spelled, but as we were talking about earlier, as they sounded. So instead of writing, if I wanted to write out the word dogs phonetically, I wouldn't write D-O-G-S, because that's how it's spelled. If I wanted to write it as it sounds, I would write D-O-G-Z, dogs. And so these texts are written out phonetically as they sound. And so there's been some debate, like, well, why are they written this way? And some people have thought, well, the scribes just didn't know what they were doing. Others, had slightly. My opinion on this ended up being, in a more nuanced way, that they're to help the participant in a particular ritual be able to pronounce the words without actually having to know the language or what the texts are actually saying. But I don't know how controversial it is, in that I don't think anybody's reviewed it because it's just in a dissertation form now. I haven't published it as an academic work. So people are reticent to review dissertations. But I mean, that's certainly not a consensus position as far as I know. So I guess that could be one.
So you're known for not being controversial, but if you had to pick on something that you knew, it would be the idea that some of these cuneiform tablets are written in certain ways that the person who might not know how to say the word would be able to say the word.
Yeah. Yep. So if I were to write out, Hebrew for you, if you didn't know Hebrew, Stephen, I don't know, maybe you're a Hebrew expert. I'm not sure.
I'm not a Hebrew expert. Okay. No.
So if I wanted you to pronounce Genesis 1, Genesis 1:1, I wouldn't write out in Hebrew, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. I would write out B-E-R.
Right, I get the idea.
In English characters.
Yeah, the phonetic way of saying it.
Well, you would be able to pronounce it. It might that if I took my time and actually showed you where you're supposed to put the accent on every word.
This does go back to what you were saying earlier. If people with unpopular names, to write them out in a phonetic way so that you can present them and say their name properly in front of the crowd. So
you could do
kind of makes sense. Maybe some of that has leaked into your ideas on cuneiform a little bit. That's carrying over. Who knows? Thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Before I go, I owe the Ctruth patrons a huge thanks for their continued support in my endeavor to explore the world of chronology. Thank you all. Like the video, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment, and check out these other videos.